Hi, we will now discuss paper 4 of variant 2 in 2023 October-November series. Let's get started with the first question that we have here. So the first question is a question related to transformations. And the first part of it, A1, translate triangle T by a vector -7, 1 and label the image as K. So the triangle T is given on the diagram, on the grid, and there is a column vector which is -7, 1. This column vector explains that the -7 in the column vector explains that it's going to move 7 units to the left, and this 1 at the bottom in the column vector explains that it's going to move 1 unit up. To translate means to slide it. So when we consider this triangle here, I'm going to select a vertex. So let's say that I'm going to pick this vertex here. So I need to move this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units to the left. And we had 1 at the bottom in the column vector. So it's going to go 1 unit up, which means this vertex in the triangle will be here. The same way we can move the other vertices also the same way like we did here, or as we already know that this vertex is here, we know that the triangle will look like this. And we are supposed to label the image as K. The second part of the question that is given to us is to describe the single transformation that maps triangle K onto triangle T. So it's the other way around. So it will anyways be translation, and it will be, we need to write the column vector. So when it comes to translation, we need to mention the column vector. Likewise, based on whatever the type of transformation it is, these points has to be mentioned. So I need to mention it as translation, but the column vector will be the same numbers, but with opposite signs because it's going to be in the opposite direction. So I can write it as translate by vector 7 and -1. This is how I should write it. The second part of the question, B, reflect triangle T in the line y is equal to 4. So first I need to draw the y is equal to 4 line. This will be that y is equal to 4 line because y is equal to 4 means the straight line has to pass through the y-axis at 4. That's the meaning. So I need to do a reflection. So when it comes to reflection, now if I consider this point here, it's already on the line, so it will be on the line as well. Now when I consider this point here, it's 2 units away from this y is equal to 4 line. So it's going to be the same distance away, but in the opposite direction. So it's going to be here. This point is again 2 units away from the y is equal to 4 line. So it will be the same distance away in the opposite direction. So this is where it will be. So if I connect it, this is how the triangle will be. So this is the image that we get when we reflect it about this y is equal to 4 line. Let's move on to part C. Rotate triangle T through 90 degrees clockwise about 0, 0. So we need to rotate this triangle T 90 degrees clockwise. So when we do rotation, we are going to make use of a tracing paper. So we will have to place the tracing paper on the grid. And at the beginning itself, on the tracing paper, after you place it on the grid, you can make a small mark like this at the top so that it's easier for us to understand how the image will look like after a rotation. Maybe it could be 90 degrees, 180 or 270. And in the question, it was mentioned that it's rotated about the center of center, which is the origin. So I'm going to mark a small dot there. On the tracing paper, we will have to draw this triangle on the tracing paper. Now this triangle T is only rotated 90 degrees clockwise, which means clockwise is going to be this direction, which means this point will move exactly here when there is a 90-degree clockwise rotation. So the mark that we made here is very helpful for us to identify exactly whether we have made a 90-degree rotation, 180-degree rotation, or whether it's 270 degrees. So this is going to be 90 degrees. So when we do a 90-degree rotation like this, the image that we would end up getting. So we need to place the pencil point or the pen point at this point O, which is the origin, and then we need to rotate the tracing paper after we had drawn the diagram on the tracing paper, diagram of triangle T on the tracing paper. When that happens, we end up getting the image like this. This is how it will look like. So this is what we are supposed to do. Let's move on to question D. In question D, D1, enlarge triangle T by a scale factor of -½ and the center of enlargement is given to us as 0, 0, and we need to label the image as P. So to do the enlargement here, the scale factor is -½ This half explains that the image is going to be smaller than the object, because the moment it goes below 1, we need to understand that it's going to be smaller than the object given. This negative explains that it's going to be in the opposite direction of the center of enlargement. Here the center of enlargement is 0, 0. So again, it's the origin. And this triangle T is enlarged by a scale factor of -½ To find how it would look like, I'm going to start drawing lines. So first I'm going to connect this vertex to this line. So this is how it would look like. So this distance from the center of enlargement, I need to check how many units this is going to be. So this is going to be 2 diagonal units away. So -½ means we need to halve that. So negative is going to be in the opposite direction. As it's a half, we need to halve this distance. So when we halve this distance, it will be here. So that is how I know where the vertex for the image, where this vertex for the image will be. The same way, I'm going to do it for the other one as well. So I'm going to consider this point that we have here. I'm going to draw a line that goes through the center like this. So it's going to be something like this. It goes through the center in the sense it's going to be the origin. It goes through the center of enlargement. Now, this is going to be like 6 diagonal units away. So when we halve it, it's going to be like 3 diagonal units, which means it will be here. From here, it's going to be 3 diagonal units away. So it's going to be here. The next one that we have is this point. So if I'm to draw it, this is how it is. So we have it this way. Okay, so this is how it's going to be. So when we consider this, it's like 3, almost about like, we can just consider it as diagonal units as well, or else we can just measure this distance and half it. So half it means it's going to be the same distance in the opposite side. So that will be here. So this way I have marked all 3 vertices for the triangle. So in that case, we need to connect it. So this is where the image will be after the enlargement of -½ after the enlargement of a scale of -½ from the origin. Now we are also supposed to label this as P. Now in the next question, describe fully the single transformation that maps triangle P onto triangle T, which means it's going to be the opposite of what we did in the previous one. So when we describe the single transformation, we need to mention what type of transformation it is. So it's going to be enlargement. So enlargement by, and when it comes to enlargement, we need to mention 2 points. One is the scale factor, the other one is the center of enlargement. So enlargement by a scale factor of, it's going to be negative because it's in the opposite direction. Now here we have just 1 unit away, 1 diagonal unit away has now become 2 diagonal units away, which means the scale factor is going to be a 2. So it's going to be -2 as it's in the opposite direction. And the center of enlargement should be mentioned. So the center of enlargement is the origin. So about the origin, and if we want, we can mark it as 0, 0, or just write it as origin. Let's move on to the next question. Daisy records her 50 homework marks. The table shows the results. So this is the results of the homework marks. We need to write the range. So range is the difference between the highest and the lowest value, or the difference between the maximum and the minimum value. the maximum value is 20, the minimum value is 15. So when we check the difference between these two, that is equal to 5. So that's the range. The mode is going to be the most popular score or the most frequent score. So we need to check which one has the highest frequency. It's going to be 19, but the mode will be the score that occurs 19 times, which is going to be the 17. So 17 is the mode. This 19 explains that 17 occurs 19 times. That's the meaning. We now need to calculate the median. So median is the score in the middle. And to find the score in the middle, we first need to make sure that the scores are in order. It can be ascending or descending order. So anyways, the scores are in order. And when calculating the median, now according to this question, we have 50 scores, which is an even number of scores. When we have an even number of scores, to identify the score in the middle, we will end up getting 2 scores in the middle. So we will have to add both those scores and divide it by 2, or find the average of the 2 scores in the middle. That is how we calculate the median. So we have 50 scores, which means we need to add 1 to this 50 divided by 2. So we get 25.5, which means we need to find the 25th score and the 26th score, add them up together and divide it by 2. So according to the question here, so when we add 1 and 3, it makes a total of 4. 4 and 19 makes a total of 23, which means the 24th score, 25th, 26th, and up to 11 scores, we will have 18, which means the 25th and the 26th score, they both are 18. So both the 18s will have to be added together and divide it by 2. So when we have two same numbers, it will be the same number even when we add and divide it by 2, which means according to this question, the median will be 18. The next question is to calculate the mean. Now, mean is going to be the average of the scores. To find the average of the scores, we need to add all the scores and divide it by the number of scores. Now here, the way how we need to add them up is, so I'm going to do it in a calculator. So I'm going to add all the scores. So I have 15 that occurs once, and then I have 16 that occurs 3 times. So I can write it as 16 times 3. And 17 occurs 19 times. So that's going to be 17 times 19. 18 has occurred 11 times. So it's going to be 18 times 11. Then we have 19 times 10. And then we have 20 times 6, because 20 has occurred 6 times. So 20 times 6. I need to multiply them all, add them up, and then I need to divide by the total number of scores. So the total number of scores according to the question is 50. So I need to divide this by 50. So when I do that, I get the answer as 17.88. So this 17.88 will be the mean. So that's the average of the scores given here. So 17.88. Let's move on to part B. There are 11 scores given here. So the list shows its scores in 11 tests. Complete the stem and the leaf diagram to show this information. And we are given a key. So 2 line 5 represents 25. So we need to first complete the stem and the leaf diagram. So when completing the stem and the leaf diagram, make sure that it's an ordered stem and a leaf diagram, which means when you put the scores, make sure you put it in the ascending order. So because here it's given as 1, 2, 3, it goes in the ascending order from the smallest. So even the scores that we write along each rows should be written in that same order. Now the smallest score that we have here is 18. So every time we write that, we can cross out the cross out the score that is given, so that we don't miss any of the scores and we don't repeat the same score again. Now when we move on to the 20s, so we have 2 20s. So I'm going to write 2 zeros, and I have 3 21s. So 1 1 1, and then I have 1 22, and then I have a 5, which is 25. Next, when we move on to the 30s, so we have three numbers in the 30s. So it's 30, 33, and 34. So it's going to be 0, 3, and 4. So while writing it on the sim and the left diagram, I have put them in order. The second part of the question is to calculate the median. The median is the score in the middle, like we discussed previously. In this case, to calculate the median, now we have 11 scores. So I'm going to cross them out so that it's easier for us to identify what's the median. So I'm going to cross in the ascending order from this side and in the descending order from this side. So the smallest score, largest score, smallest, largest, smallest, largest, smallest, largest, smallest, largest, which means this is the median. So this one actually is a 21. So the median will be 21. We now need to calculate the interquartile range. So the interquartile range is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. So this is how we calculate the interquartile range. Now, this is the median that we have already calculated. So the score that is in the middle of those 5 scores is going to be this one. So that is 20. We have 5 scores after the median here, which means the score in the middle again will be this one. That's 30. So therefore, the interquartile range will be the difference between 30 and 20, which is equal to a 10. So the interquartile range, according to the stem and the leaf diagram given here, is a 10. Let's move on to the next question that we have. In question 3a, the value of Priya's car decreases by 10% every year, and the value is $7,695 now. So we need to calculate the value of the car after 1 year and the value of the car 1 year ago. The question clearly states that it decreases by 10% each year. So if it decreases by 10% each year means we need to first find the multiplier. So to do that, from 100 as it decreases by 10, so I need to deduct that 10, so that's going to be 90%. So this 90% as a decimal will be 0.90 or just 0.9. So now when we are supposed to find the value after, that means the starting value is known to us, which is 7,695, and we need to calculate the final value here. So when we are to find the final value, we need to multiply with the multiplier. So when we multiply 7,695 with 0.90, we will see what we get as the answer. So 7695 has to be times with 0.90. So when we multiply, we get $6,925.50. $6,925.5, that is what we got in the calculator. But when it comes to money, always make sure we need to make sure that we write it correct to 2 decimal places. So this is what we get as the answer. The next question is where we are supposed to find the value 1 year ago. That means the present value is the 7,695. We are supposed to calculate the value 1 year ago. In that case, this number, that is this multiplier that we have, which is 0.90, we need to actually divide this number 7,695 by that amount to find the starting value. Starting value in the sense the value 1 year ago. So 7,695 has to be divided by 0.9. So when we do that, we end up getting $8,550. So this will be the amount 1 year ago. The next question is a question related to simple interest. So I have written the formula here, which is interest is equal to principal times the rate is the percentage, times n is the period of time, that is the number of years, divided by 100. If you are to find the final amount, means the interest and the principal amount. The principal amount is the amount that you invested. So we need to add them together to find the final amount. In this question, Ali spends $600 at a rate of 2% per year, simple interest. So this is how I know that the question is a simple interest question. Calculate the value of Ali's investment at the end of 5 years. which means the final value, A, is what we are supposed to find. So first, I'm going to calculate the interest. So it's the principal times rate times n divided by 100. Principal is the amount he invested. So that's going to be 600. Times it by the rate, which is the percentage, that's 2. Times it by n, that's the period of time, which is 5 years. So that's going to be 5. I need to divide this by 100 to calculate the interest. So when I times 600 by 2 and then by 5, and when I divide it by 100, the interest that I get is 60. But I need to calculate the value of Ali's investment at the end of 5 years, which means the final amount is what I'm supposed to find. So to find the final amount, the interest, which is 60, has to be added to the amount he invested, which is 600. So we end up getting $660. This is the value of Ali's investment. Question C. Sarah invests $500 at a rate of R% per year, and this is compound interest. At the end of 12 years, the value of Sarah's investment is 601.35, correct to the nearest cent. Find the value of R. So when it comes to compound interest, again, we have a compound interest formula, just like for simple interest. So here, the value of the investment, that is the final value, is A. P is the amount we started with, or the amount that you invested, and 1 plus R over 100. The reason why we have an addition here is because compound interest means each year the amount keeps increasing. So that's the reason why we have addition here. R over 100. So R is again the percentage, N is the period of time. So we're going to use this formula, and we got to just substitute the information given here and find what's missing. So A is the final value. So the value of the investment after 12 years, which is $601.35. This is equal to P, that is the amount invested, which is 500 times 1 plus R is what we are supposed to find. So I'm going to write it as R over 100, and N is the period of time, which is 12. I need to solve this and find what R is. So first, I'm going to bring this 500 to the other side because I need to isolate R. So when I bring it to the other side, it gets divided. And I have 1 plus R over 100 to the power 12. But I need to get rid of this power 12. So to get rid of that power 12, I'm going to put the root of, I need to find the root of 12. The 12th root is what I'm supposed to find. So when I find the 12th root of this answer, this will actually give me what 1 plus R over 100 is. The reason is the 12th root and the power 12 will cancel off. So I'm going to put this in the calculator. So I need to find the 12th root. So this is how I'm going to do. So the 12th root, and inside the root, I'll have to put the fraction bar, and we have 601.35 divided by 500. So when I do this, I get 1.01549. Likewise, I get that is the value of 1 plus R over 100. So I'll just write it as 1.015499. I'll just leave it like that. This is equal to 1 plus R over 100. I need to now isolate R by taking the 1 and the 100 to the other side. So to take the 1, I need to subtract the 1. And then as it's being divided by 100, to take the 100 to the other side, I need to times it by 100. That is how I can find what R is. So to find R, to this value that we have 1.015499, I'll just write it like this. From this, I need to deduct a 1. And then this 100 is dividing. To take the 100 to the other side, I need to multiply the answer that I get here by 100. So I'm going to do it in the calculator here. So I'm going to subtract a 1 and then times it by 100. So when I do that, I get 1.5499. and I can write it correct to 2 decimal places, which is going to be 1.55%. So directly we end up getting the answer as a percentage. So this is going to be the answer. Let's move on to part D. We have two parts here in part D, part 1 and part 2 in question D. So the mass of a radioactive substance decreases exponentially at a rate of 3% each day. So we need to find the overall percentage decrease at the end of 10 days. The overall percentage decrease is what we are supposed to find. Now, when we have a question related to exponential increase or exponential decrease, we can use the same formula that we have for compound interest, but if it's an increase, it will be a plus. If it's a decrease, it will be a minus. Now here in the question, it clearly states that it's an exponential decrease, which means I can use the formula A is equal to P times 1 minus R over 100 to the power n. Now here the rate is given to us, the time is given, but the time is given in days, and even the rate is given by, the rate clearly states that it decreases by 3% each day. So we need to calculate the overall percentage decrease. So to calculate the overall percentage decrease, let's assume that the value that we start with, the principal amount is going to be a 1. So this is just an assumption. So I'm going to write it as 1 minus, the rate is 3 over 100. So then after 10 days, in the end of 10 days means the value for n is going to be a 10. I'm going to find how much this is going to be. So let's see what we end up getting. So when we do that, I have, okay, so I'm going to write it as, even if I put the 1 here, or even if I do not, it will not make a big difference there. So it's going to be 1 minus 3 over 100. And I'm going to close the brackets. And the power is going to be 10. So when I find this, I get 0.7374. This is the amount that is left in the end of 10 days. But the question is asking us to find the overall percentage decrease, which means now I will write it here. So we get 0.7374. Likewise, we end up getting a value. This is the amount that is left. By how much has it decreased is what we are supposed to find. So to do that, from the starting amount, which is 1, I need to deduct the amount that is left, which is 0.7374, this value that we get. I'm gonna write it over the starting amount, and then I need to multiply by 100% to convert it into percentage, which means this is the amount that is left. To find by how much it has decreased, the starting amount is 1. From that 1, I'm going to deduct the amount that I got. So this is by how much it has been decreased, but I need to write it as a percentage. So I need to times it by 100. So when I do that, I get 26.2575. Likewise, we get a value. So I can round it to 2 decimal places and write it as 26.26%. So this will end up giving us 26.26%. Let's move on to the next part. Find the number of whole days it takes until the mass of this substance is 1/2 of its original amount. We need to find the number of whole days, which means we should not write any decimal points in it, or the number of hours or anything like that should not be mentioned. It should be complete days, whole numbers, as a whole number. The answer should be in the form of whole numbers. Now, to find this, now it clearly states that the mass of the substance is 1/2 of its original amount, which means again, we are going to use the same formula as the previous one, which is A is equal to P times 1 minus R over 100 to the power n. The minus is because it's an exponential decrease. So here the starting amount we have considered, I'm going to consider is P, which means the final amount has to be 1/2 of this, means it will be P divided by 2. This one should be multiplied by, this P should be multiplied by 1 minus the rate we already know, which is 3 over 3. So that's going to be 3 over 100. and n is what we are supposed to find. So when you have an equation like this p and this p can cancel out, or else I can bring this p is being multiplied. So when I take it to the other side, it will get divided. So the p and the p will get cancelled out. So this will leave me with 1/2, which is the same as a half. I can write it as 0.5. So this 0.5 is equal to 1 minus 3/100. So when we do 1 minus 3/100, so 1 minus 3/100 is the same as 0.97. So I can write this as 0.97 to the power n. Now, to find the value of n, I'm going to put different values for n so that it's equal to the 0.5 or slightly below this value. Only then I know that the substance has reached 1/2 of its original amount. It shouldn't be more than 0.5, because when it's more than 0.5, that is the amount that it's left with, which means it has not reached half of it. So anything below, it should be something that is just below 0.5. That's the meaning, or just equal to 0. Or exactly equal to 0.5. Let's check this one out. So we have 0.97. So I'm going to randomly put a value for as the power. So let's say the power is a 10. So I get 0.73. It has not reached half. So let's say that it's going to be 0.97 to the power. Let's consider it as 20. So we get 0.54. Even now, it has not reached half, because this is the amount that it's left with. So then I'm gonna make it into 21. So let's say that it's going to be 0.97 to the power 21. 21, it's going to be 0.527, still not. Then I'm gonna make the power 22. I get 0.51111. It has 511. So that means it has almost reached half. But still, this 0.511 is a little more than 0.5, which means that is the amount that it's left with. This explains that this hasn't deducted, this has not reduced by half. So then I'm going to move on to, I'm going to check 0.97 to the power 23. I get 0.496. This is when I know that the amount that it's left with is 0.496, which means it's just below 0.5. That means the number of days it takes, the number of whole days it takes is going to be 23. We cannot go with 22.5 or any in-between values, that is in between 22 and 23, because the question clearly states that to calculate the number of whole days. Therefore, the value of n will be 23. So it's going to be 23 days. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 4. The diagram shows a sector of a circle that is made into a cone by joining OA and OB. And the sector angle is given to us as x. The radius of the sector is 7.5. And the radius of the circle in the cone is given to us as 1.5 centimeters. We need to find what x is. Now, according to this diagram that is given to us, this side OA, which is the radius of the sector, and even this side OB, that will be the radius of the sector as well. So these two will overlap. We will be connected together to form the cone. So that means this is going to be that side, which means this length that we have here, that is the arc length that we have here, the arc of the sector, will actually form the circle of the cone, will form this circle, which means from this I can clearly state that the arc length of the sector is equal to the circumference of the cone. So arc length is equal to the circumference of the cone. Circumference, or the circumference of the circle in the cone. Using this relationship only, we need to find what this x is. To find that, now the way how we find the arc length is going to be angle out of 360 times by 2 pi r. So if we add this 2r, the 2 radius, then it will be the perimeter of the sector. We need only the arc length. So that's going to be angle out of 360. So the angle is x. So it's going to be out of 360. Times it with 2 pi r. So that's going to be 2 times pi times the radius, which is 7.5 according to this sector that is given. This will be equal to the circumference of the circle. So to find the circumference of a circle, we use the formula circumference is equal to 2 pi r. So it's going to be 2 times pi times the radius of the circle. So the radius of the circle is going to be 1.5. I need to solve this to find what x is. So I'm going to isolate x. To isolate x, so in the other side, I already have 2 times pi times 1.5. This 360 is dividing. When I take it to the other side, it gets multiplied. Then 2 pi and 7.5, they are being multiplied. When I take it to the other side, they will get divided. So I can write it as 2 times pi times 7.5. Or simply, I can even cross out 2 pi and 2 pi here itself, then take the other 2 to the other side. That can be done as well. Now I need to find what x is. I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I get. So now I can cross out this 2 and 2, the pi and the pi. So I'm going to put the rest in the calculator. So I have 1.5 times 360. So I have 1.5 times 360. And I need to divide it by 7.5. So I get 72. That's going to be the value of the angle. So x is 72 degrees. That is the angle for the sector. Let's move on to part B. The diagram shows a cylinder with radius 8 centimeters and inside a sphere with radius 17 centimeters. So I'll just mark it while reading. So the radius of the cylinder is 8 centimeters. The radius of the sphere is 17 centimeters. Both ends of the cylinder touch the curved surface of the sphere. Show that the height of the cylinder is 30 centimeters. So we need to find a way to say that the height is going to be 20 centimeters. Now, from this point to this end also will be 17. From this point to this point will also be the same 17. The reason is because it will still be the radius of that sphere. So this is going to be in line with this point and this point. They will be in line together. So this will make a right angled triangle. That way I can apply the Pythagoras theorem to find this length. So I'm going to label that as x so I can find what x is. So by applying the Pythagoras theorem, I can find what x is. Now here we are trying to find one of the shorter leg. So if we are trying to find one of the shorter leg, from the hypotenuse square, I need to deduct the other shorter leg that is given to us, square, and then I need to square root it. Only if the hypotenuse is to be found, we need to add them. So as one of the shorter leg is calculated, we need to deduct it. So to find what this x is, I need to do the hypotenuse square, which is 17. 17 is the hypotenuse because that is right opposite to the 90-degree angle, minus 8 square, and then I need to square root it. So when I do that, the square root of 17 square minus 8 square is what I'm supposed to do. I get 15. So this is the value of x. So I know x is 15. This same length or the height will be in this side as well. This side also will be that same x, which means if I'm to calculate the height of the cylinder will be 2x. So that's the same as 2 times 15, which is equal to 30 centimeters. So that is what we're supposed to show here. So to show means we need to prove as to how we can get that 30. That's the meaning. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Calculate the volume of the cylinder as a percentage of the volume of the sphere. So here the volume of the cylinder has to be written out of the volume of the sphere as a percentage. So I need to times it by 100 in the end. So to calculate the volume of the cylinder, the formula that we would use is going to be pi r squared times h. So the volume of the sphere formula is already given to us as 4/3 pi r cube. The volume of the sphere will be given, but not the volume of the cylinder. So according to the question, the volume of the cylinder is pi r squared h. So I'm going to substitute the values now. So pi times the radius of the cylinder we had previously was 8. So 8 squared times the height of the cylinder was 30 over 4/3 times pi times the radius of the sphere, which was 17. We need to cube that and times it by 100 to convert it into percentage. So pi and pi gets cancelled out. We need to we can put this in the calculator and see what we get as the percentage. So I'm going to put this in the calculator. So I have 8 squared. I need to times it by 30. And then again, I'm going to times it by 100 because in the end, I need to times it by 100. Then I'm going to write 4/3 times 17 cubed. So I'm going to cube this. So when I do that, I get 29.3099, which is the same as 29.31%. So 29.31% is going to be the answer for this question. Let's move on to part C. The diagram shows a solid sphere with radius 6 centimeters inside a cube with side length 20 centimeters. The cube contains water to a depth of 15 centimeters, and now the sphere is removed. So what will be the new depth of the water in the cube? So first let's calculate the new depth, the new volume that is left. So I'll write it as V new, which means that is the new volume we are trying to find. And then we can calculate the depth. So the volume of the water that is available is what I'm going to first calculate. From this, I'm going to deduct the volume of the sphere because the sphere is removed. Then when I do that, I can find the volume of water that is remaining. So to do that, the volume of water available is in the shape of a cuboid. So in that case, it's going to be 20 times 20 because this side is 20, this side is 20. This is a cube, but the height of the water is up to 15 centimeters, which looks like a cuboid. So that's going to be 20 times 15. And from this, I need to deduct the volume of the sphere. So the volume of the sphere formula is 4/3 pi r cubes. That's going to be 4/3 times pi times the radius of the sphere. The radius of the sphere is given to us as 6. So this distance is 6. So it's going to be 6 cubed. So now we are going to put this in the calculator and see what's the new volume. So when we do that, let's see what we get. So we have 20 times 20, which is the same as 20 squared times 15. From that, I need to deduct 4/3 pi r cube, where I have a pi here and the r is 6. So it's going to be 6 cubed. So when I do the subtraction, I get 5095.22. So this 5095.22 is the volume of water that is remaining. But the question is asking us to calculate the new depth. So when it comes to the new depth, this is the volume of water that is remaining. The new depth will have the same base 20 times 20 base, which is 20 and 20, but only the height is going to be different. So I can say that this is equal to 20 times 20 times h. I now need to calculate what this h is. So this 5095.22 has to be divided by 20 times 20. So this will be equal to the height. So I'm gonna divide this answer that I got here by 20 times 20 or by 20 squared. So when I do that, I get 12.738, which is the same as 12.74, correct to 2 decimal places. So 12.74 centimeters will be the new depth. Now they're asking for the new depth, not by how much it has been reduced, not by how much the height has been reduced. So it's going to be 12.74 centimeters. With that, we are done with question 4. Let's move on to question 5. In a shop, the cost of a fiction book is X dollars, and the cost of a reference book is X plus $2. The cost of 11 fiction books is the same as the cost of 10 reference books, which means 11 fiction books is the same as 10 reference book. I can write it this way. Reference books, I can write it this way. Now here, F that I have written here is the cost of a fiction book, which is X dollars. So I can write it as 11X. This is equal to 10 times the cost of a reference book, which is X plus $2. So I can write it as 10 times X plus 2. Now, I need to solve this to find what X is. So first I need to get rid of the brackets by expanding. So to expand it, I need to multiply the terms inside the brackets with the number that is outside the bracket, which is this 10. So this gives us 11x, which is equal to 10x plus 10 times 2 is 20. And I need to find what x is. So I need to bring the terms with x to one side and find what x is. So I already have 11x in the left side of the equation. I'm going to take the 10x to the other side. It gets deducted. So this is equal to 20. So 11x minus 10x is equal to x. So this gives us the value for x, which is the cost of a fiction book, that is $20. So we are supposed to find what x is, which is 20. Let's move on to part B. In another shop, the cost of a fiction book is $y and the cost of a reference book is y plus $2. Maria spends $95 on fiction books and $147 on reference books. She buys a total of 12 books. So we need to show that we get 6y squared minus 109y minus 95 is equal to this 0. Now, in this case, the total number of books is given as 12, which means the number of fiction books and the number of reference books together is equal to 12. That is the number of books. This is not related to the cost, but this is related to the number of books. Now, to calculate the number of fiction books, we know how much she spends on fiction books, which is $95. And the price of one fiction book is $y, which means the total amount that she spent, which is 95, if we divide that by the price of one fiction book, which is $y, will give us the total number of fiction books she buys. The same way, the number of reference books, to calculate that, the amount she spends, the total amount she spends on reference books is 147. I need to divide the total amount she spends on the reference books by the cost of one reference book, which is y plus 2. So this will give us the total number of reference books. This will be equal to 12 because the total number of fiction books and the total number of reference books together is equal to 12. We need to now solve this and write the equation in this format, which is 6y squared minus 109y minus 95 is equal to 0. Now, when we have two fractions with different denominators, to combine the fractions, to add the fractions, we need to make sure that the denominators are the same. So to make it the same, I can times the first one's denominator, which is y by y plus 2. So I need to do the same thing to the numerator. And the second denominator, I can multiply by y. So the numerator also has to be multiplied by y. When I do that, I end up getting, so I can write it here, which is 95 times y plus 2 plus 147y. And in the denominator, I have y times y plus 2. So this is equal to 12. So I need to solve this. So I'm going to get rid of the denominator. So to get rid of the denominator, I need to bring this to the other side. So I can expand this at the same time. So I can get rid of the brackets. 95y plus 95 times 2, which is 190, plus 107y. And I have 12 already. And I can expand this. When I expand it, I get y squared plus 2y. And then I'm going to take it to the other side. So we have y squared plus 2y that gets multiplied with this 12. So this 95y and 147y is 242y plus 190 is equal to, I can expand this. I get 12y squared plus 24y. To expand is to multiply the terms inside the brackets with the number that is outside the brackets. So when I do that, this is what I get. I'm going to bring all the terms to one side and make the equation equal to a 0, because we know that the equation has to be equal to a 0. So I'm going to take the terms in the left side to the right side of the equation, because so I can make the y squared, I can keep the y squared positive. So I have 0 is equal to, I already have 12y squared and 24y. I'm going to take this 242y to the other side, so minus 242y. And 190 to the other side, that becomes minus 190. But still, now even if I, okay, now I can combine the like terms. So when I combine the like terms, I get 12y squared, 24y minus 242y will give us minus 218y minus 190, which is equal to this 0. Even after combining the like terms, or even before that, we can clearly see that it's not the same as the equation that is given here. But to make it the same, now we have 2 in common for all 3 terms. So I'm going to factorize that too. So I'm going to take out the 2. So the 12y squared will become 6y squared. From this 218, when I divide it by 2, I get 109, which is minus 109, because I have minus 218y. So I get minus 109y. And minus 190, when I divide it by 2, I get minus 95. So this is equal to a 0. Now I need to get rid of this 2 that is multiplying. So I need to take it to the other side. So it will get divided. So we get 6y squared minus 109y minus 95 is equal to 0 divided by 2. Anything that is, now when the 0 is divided by a 2, that becomes a 0 anyways. So I can write it as 6y squared minus 109y minus 95 is equal to this 0. So now the equation looks similar to the one that is given. It is exactly the same as the one that is given in the question. Let's move on to part 2. Factorize 6y squared minus 109y minus 95. So to factorize this, we have 6y squared minus 109y minus 95. So we have a coefficient in front of y squared, which is a 6. So to factorize it, I need to multiply with the number at the back. So 6 and minus 95, when I multiply, I get minus 570, which means I need to find the 2 numbers that multiply together to give us minus 570. And when we add the 2 numbers together, it should give a sum of minus 109. Now I need to find what those 2 numbers are. So in this case, it will be 5 times 114. That gives us 570 and 109 when we add them together. But we need to make sure that 114 has a negative and the 5 is positive. Now, We cannot make use of the direct method like writing y and the 5 in a bracket, y and 114 in a bracket, because we have a coefficient in front of this y squared. For this y squared, we have a coefficient. That's the reason. So due to that reason, we always have to go make use of the long method. So that is, we have 6y squared, and instead of minus 109y, I can write it as plus 5y minus 114y. So this is replaced with two terms now. Now I have minus 95. I need to now start pairing it, and I need to factorize. So here when I factorize, I can take the y out. This will leave me with 6y plus 5. And from this 14 and 95, they both are divisible by 19. So I can take 19 out, but whatever the sign that I have here has to be written here as well. And then I have 19, and I will have the same terms inside the first bracket here as well, 6y plus 5. So then I can write the terms inside the brackets once, and the terms outside the brackets I can combine and put it into the next bracket. So this will be what I get. This is the answer that I get when we factorize 6y squared minus 109y minus 95. Now the next question is to find the value of y. Now to find the value of y, now in the previous question, we got 6y squared minus 109y minus 95 is equal to 0. So 6y squared minus 109y minus 95 is equal to 0. But this 6y squared minus 109y minus 95, when we factorize, we get 6y plus 5 and then y minus 19, which is equal to a 0. So when these two are multiplied, it gives us a 0, means each of the bracket should be equal to a 0. So one of the bracket will be equal to a 0. That is how we get a 0 when they are multiplied together. So now we need to isolate y. We need to find what y is. I need to take the plus 5 to the other side. That becomes minus 5. And the 6 is multiplying. When I take it to the other side, it gets divided by 6. So that is the value of y that I get here. And for the other one, when y minus 19 is equal to a 0, to find what y is, I need to take the minus 19 to the other side. That becomes plus 19. So the value of y is 19, which means we have two values for y. One is minus 5 over 6 and the other one is 19. In this case, now according to the question, this y is the cost of a fiction book. So if we are to solve, means the meaning of the y is actually a cost. Cost cannot be negative. Due to that reason, we cannot consider this one. So I can write it as cost cannot be negative. So due to that reason, so just like dimensions cannot be negative or length cannot be negative, cost cannot be negative. So therefore, the value of y is equal to 19. This is what we get as the answer. Let's now move on to question 6. In this right angle triangle that is given, one side is given to us as 5. This shorter leg is given to us as t, and the hypotenuse is given to us as 2t plus 3. We need to calculate what w is. So as this is a right angle triangle, we can apply the Pythagorean theorem, at the same time trigonometry, which is SOHCAHTOA. So in this case, we're going to first find what t is. So I can apply the Pythagorean theorem, which is the square of the shorter legs, which is 5 and t. So when I square them and add them together, this will be equal to the square of the hypotenuse, which is this 2t plus 3 square. So 2t plus 3 square. So here I did not write it this way because we are not asked to find what c is. Because here the value of t is not known. So first we are trying to find what t is. That's the reason why I wrote it this way. So 5 squared is equal to 25. So this is 25 plus t squared is equal to, I have 2t plus 3 squared. So 2t plus 3 square is the same as 2t plus 3 times 2t plus 3. That's the meaning. So I need to expand it. 2t times 2t is 4t squared. 2t times 3 is 6t. 3 times 2t is 6t. 3 times 3 is 9, which is the same as 4t squared plus 12t plus 9. So I can put that here. So 4t squared plus 12t plus 9. Instead of expanding it this way, I can also do it directly. That is, the first term in the bracket, which is 2t, has to be squared. That becomes 4t squared. Then we square the second term as well, which is 3 squared, which is equal to this 9. To find this term in the middle, the two terms inside the brackets has to be multiplied together. So 2t times 3 is a 6t. And then that answer has to be multiplied by a 2 always. And that gives us 12t. Now I need to make this equation equal to a 0, because only then I can solve it to find what t is. I'm going to take these two terms to the other side of the equation. I already have 4t squared plus 12t plus 9. I'm going to take the 25 to the other side. That becomes minus 25. Plus t squared to the other side. That becomes minus t squared, which is equal to 0. Now I'm going to combine all the like terms. So I get 40 squared minus t squared is equal to 3t squared. And then I have 12t, and I have plus 9 and minus 25, which is the same as minus 16. This is equal to 0. When I solve this, now this is what I get here. So to solve this, I'm going to use the quadratic equation to solve it. So to solve this, I need to first identify what a, b, and c is, because according to the quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So the value of a is 3, the value of b is 12, and the value of c is minus 16. So a is 3, b is 12, c is minus 16. So I'm going to solve this using the quadratic formula. So when we have a quadratic equation, we can solve it using the quadratic formula by factorizing it. At the same time, we can use completing the square method to solve it. But out of all three, the easiest one and the one that can be done quickly is the quadratic formula. So I'm going to use the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula will be given at the beginning. So that's going to be, so the quadratic formula is x is equal to minus b plus minus the square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now I'm going to substitute the values of a, b, and c that we have here into this quadratic formula to find what x is. But here our x is this t. So I'm going to write t here, which is equal to minus the value of b, which is 12, plus minus the square root. B is again 12 squared minus 4 times the value of a is 3, and the value of c is minus 16, over this entire thing is over 2 times the value of a, which is a 3. I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I get as the value for t. But I will get 2 values for t. The reason why I would get 2 values for t is because of this plus minus sign that I have. So I'm going to put this in the calculator with a plus and then with a minus and see what I get. So I have minus 12. So first I'm going to put it with a plus the square root. So I have 12 squared minus 4 times 3 times 4 times 3 times minus 16. So I can put the minus 16 within the brackets, or here even if we do not put the brackets, that wouldn't be a problem. And then at the bottom I have 2 times 3, which is a 6. So I'm going to write it the same way. So this is what I get as the value, so which is 1.055. So I will write it as 1.055, and there are some other values. So after the 5, we have a 0 and things like that, and some other digits as well. Here, I'm not going to round it. There is a reason why, because the next step that we will have to do is to apply it to use SOHCAHTOA. There, even a small change will make a big difference. So due to that reason, let's just leave it this way. And let's find the other value for t. So when we try to calculate the other value for t, so instead of minus 12 plus, I'm going to put a minus here, and I get a negative value, which is negative 5.055. So negative 5.055. This is what I get. But the negative value cannot be considered. This should not be considered. The reason is, here t is a side length. So dimensions cannot be negative. So dimensions cannot be negative. This is the reason why, or length cannot be negative. That's the reason why we cross this one out. So now I know that the value of t is 1.055. Now I need to find what w is. To calculate w, I know the value of this t, which is 1.055 centimeters. Then in this triangle that is given to us, to find what w is, this t is the opposite side, whereas this 5 is the adjacent side. So I can make use of tan. So tan w will be equal to the opposite side, which is 1.055, over the adjacent side, which is 5. I need to find what w is to calculate the angle. So whenever we calculate the angle, we will make use of inverse. So in this case, I need to do inverse tan for 1.055 over 5. So I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I get as a value for w. So inverse tan, and in the fraction, I'm going to write it as 1.055 over 5. And I'm going to close the brackets here. So this will give us 11.915 or 914. So that's going to be like 11.91. So I can write it as 11.91 degrees as the value for W. So here, if we just write it as 1.05 divided by 5 means, that's going to be a big change in sense. It will be like something like 11.9, not a 1 or a 2, but something like 6 or 7. So it will be a different, it will make a difference like that. So in that case, you can always make sure that to make sure that the value is close to accuracy, you need to make sure the step that we did here is written to more than 2 decimal places like we did here. Let's move on to the next question then. The diagram shows a right angle triangle PQR on horizontal ground. X is vertically above R and angle of elevation of X from P is 21. X from P, so it's going to be this one. So this is going to be that angle of elevation, which is 21 degrees. XR is 2.8 meters and RQ is given to us as 7.1 meters. So the first question given to us is to calculate the angle of elevation of X from Q. So X from Q means this is the angle that we are supposed to calculate. So this distance is given as 2.8. This distance is given as 7.1. So if I'm to draw the triangle separately, this is how it will look like. So I'm gonna draw it separately here. So this is the angle that we are supposed to find. This is 2.8. This is 7.1. And I need to calculate this angle. So this side will be the opposite side. This side is the adjacent side. So opposite over adjacent, which is going to be tan. So I can use TOA here. So tan theta, that's the angle that I'm going to find, is equal to opposite, which is 2.8 over the adjacent side, which is 7.1. But I need to calculate the value of the angle. So whenever I'm supposed to calculate the value of the angle, I need to make use of inverse. So I can write it as inverse tan. For this is what I need to calculate to find the angle. I'm going to put this in the calculator. So inverse tan, and I have 2.8 over 7.1. So when I do that, I get the value as 21.522. Likewise, I get. So correct 2 decimal places, I can write it as 21.52. So that's the value of the angle, which is 21.52 degrees. The next question is to calculate the length of PQ. That is, PQ is this side here. I need to calculate that. So to calculate that, first I need to calculate what P to R is. To find what P to R is, I need to use this triangle that is given to us, which is the triangle PRX. This angle is 21. This distance is what I'm going to calculate. XR is known to us, which is 2.8. Now in this diagram, to find what PR is, this is the opposite side and the adjacent side is what we are supposed to calculate. So we can make use of tan. So tan 21, tan theta is equal to opposite side over the adjacent side. The adjacent side is PR. So to find what PR is, I'm going to switch PR with tan 21. So PR will be equal to 2.8 divided by tan 21. I'm going to put this in the calculator. So I have the fraction. So 2.8 has to be divided by tan 21. When I do that, I get 7.29 meters. That will be the answer correct to 2 decimal places. So this is going to be 7.29 meters. Now the question is asking us to find what PQ is, not PR, but we found PR because we need that to find what PQ is. So to find the length PQ, so I'm going to make use of this right-angled triangle that we have. So this side, we found this length, this length, which is PR, we found, which is 7.29. Then this length R to Q is known to us, which is 7.1. And I need to find what P to Q is. So that is the hypotenuse of this right triangle, which means I can find that by using the Pythagorean theorem. So here, to find the hypotenuse, I need to square them, add them together and square root it. So PQ will be equal to the square of 7.929 plus the square of 7.1, add them, and I need to square root it. So let's see what we get there. The square root of 7.29 square plus 7.1 square. So when I do that, I get 10.176, which is the same as 10.18, which means the length PQ is 10.18 meters. Let's move on to the next question. We need to calculate the acute angle KML. So KML, we need to calculate. They have mentioned that it's an acute angle because sometimes if we use a different way, we can get an obtuse angle. If you get an obtuse angle from 180 degrees, we need to deduct that angle to find its acute angle. So here we need to calculate the acute angle KML, which is this one. To calculate that, right opposite to this angle M, I have 16.7. Right opposite to this angle, I have 9.1, and this angle is known to us as well, which means I'm going to make use of the sine rule to find the value of M. So according to sine rule, I can write it as this 9.1 is the side. I can write that over the sine of its angle. So 9.1, opposite to that, the angle is 32. I need to write it over sine 32. This will be equal to this side, which is 16.7. And the angle opposite to the 16.7 is this angle KML. So I will label it as M, angle M. So it should be sine M. I need to find what this M is. So I need to isolate M. So when we have two fractions on either sides like this, to find the value, I need to cross multiply. First, I need to get rid of the fraction, write it as a linear equation, and then solve it. So when I cross multiply, I get 9.1 times sine m is equal to 16.7 times sine 32. So if I'm to find what m is, I can write it as sine m is equal to 16.7 times sine 32 over 9.1. So to find what m is, I need to do the inverse of whatever the value that I get here, because I'm trying to find the value of the angles. It's going to be 16.7 times sine 32 over 9.1. So I can put this in the calculator and see what we get. So I have inverse sine fraction. We have 16.7 times sine 32. So I'm going to close the bracket for that. And in the denominator, I have 9.1. And then I'm going to close the brackets. So when I find that, I get 76.529, which is the same as 76.53. So 76.53 is definitely an acute angle. So that's going to be the value. Let's move on to part C. The area of the triangle ABC is 62.89 square centimeters. Show that the angle BAC, that is this angle, is 28.4 degrees. So we need to prove that we get 28.4 degrees when we write it correct to one decimal place. So to do that, now this is something to do with the area of the triangle. So to calculate the area of a triangle, we have two formulas. One is half times base times height, and the other one is half times AB sine C. But this is something to do with the angle that we are supposed to calculate, which means we are going to make use of this half times AB sine C to calculate the area of the triangle. That is the formula that we would be using. So the area of the triangle is half times AB sine C is what we are going to use. The area of the triangle is already known to us, which is 62.89. This is equal to half times A times B. So A and B will be the sides that are connected to this included angle, which is this 12.3 and 21.5. So I can write it as times 12.3 times 21.5 times the value of the angle, that is the sine angle, so sine C. So I need to, in this case, it's going to be sine C, that is the angle A here. So I will label it as A. Or it's going to be, that is going to be BAC. I need to isolate this A. So first I'm going to get rid of this 2 in the denominator. So it becomes multiplied when it goes to the other side. So it's going to be sine A. Okay, so I'll write it as 2 times 62.89. And it gets, the 2 gets multiplied with this. The 12.3 and the 21.5 are being multiplied. When I take it to the other side, they will get divided. So it gets divided by 12.3 and 21.5. This gives us what sine A is. To find what A is, I need to do the inverse of this. So I can write it as A is equal to inverse sine of this, because that is to calculate the value of the angle. I'm going to put this in the calculator directly and see what I get as the value for A. So I'm going to do inverse sine, and inside the brackets, I need to write 2 times 62.89 divided by 12.3 times 21.5, and then I need to close the brackets. So when I do that, I get 28.400, but correct to one decimal place, it will be 28.4. So this way, the value of the angle, this angle A is the angle BAC. So it will be the same 28.4 degrees, like in the question that is given. Let's move on to the second part. That is to calculate BC, the length of BC. So BC is this length. We now know the value of this angle, which is 28.4. These two sides are known. This angle is known. The side opposite to this angle is what we are supposed to find. In this case, we can make use of the cosine rule. So according to the cosine rule, it's going to be a squared is equal to b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos a. That is, this side and this angle will be opposite to each other. So here, according to the diagram, we need to calculate what this a is. A in the sense that is going to be this bc. To calculate this length bc, so we have a square. So I will write the square as well. So to find what bc squared is, b and c should be squared. That is going to be the two sides, which is this 12.3 and 21.5. So I'll write it as 12.3 squared plus 21.5 squared minus 2 times b times c, that is 12.3 times 21.5 times cos of a. So a is the angle, so that is going to be this 28.4. We have already calculated that. So this will give us what b squared is. But if I'm to find what b is, then I need to square root this answer that I get here. So I'm going to just move this slightly down. Okay. So I need to square root this. When I square root this, I get what BC is. Before the square root, it gave us the value of BC squared. Now we need to square root it to find what BC is. So I'm going to put this directly in the calculator and see what I get as the value for BC. So BC is equal to, so I'm going to put it in the calculator, square root 12.3 squared plus 21.5 squared minus 2 times 12.3 times 21.5 times cos 28.4. So when I do that, I get 12.177, which is the same as 12.18. So 12.18 centimeters will be the value for BC. That is what we are supposed to calculate. The next question is, AB is extended to point D such that the angle BDC is 90 degrees. We need to calculate what BD is. So BD is this length, that is what we're trying to calculate. First, I'm going to use this triangle that is given, which is a right angle triangle, and I'm going to find what AD is. So if I'm to draw the triangle here, I'm drawing it so that it's easier for us to understand. So this total length AD is what we are trying to find first. So this angle is known to us, which is 28.4. This length is also known to us, which is 21.5. So I'm going to find what A to D is. So to find that, using this angle, for this angle, this is the adjacent side and this is the hypotenuse, which means I can use cos. So it will be cos 28.4, which is equal to the adjacent side, which is AD, over the hypotenuse, which is 21.5. So if I'm to find what AD is, this 21.5 has to get multiplied with this cos 28.4. So 21.5 times cos 28.4 gives us what AD is. So I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what we get as the value for AD. So 21.5 times cos 28.4 gives us 18.912. So I'll write it as 18.91. So 18.91 is the value for 912. I'll write it like that, is the value for AD. But the question is asking us to find what BD is. So from this AD, I need to deduct this length AB, which is 12.3, to find what BD is. So to calculate BD, from this answer that I get here, I need to deduct 12.3. So that will give us what BD is. So from this answer, I need to deduct 12.3. When I do that, I get 6.612, which is the same as 6.61. That is correct to two decimal places. 6.61 is the value for BD. With that, we are done with question 7. Let's move on to question 8. The diagram shows two fair dice. So dice A, the numbers are 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 6. And in dice B, the numbers are 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. Dice A is rolled once. Write down the probability that it lands on number 6. So in dice A, number 6 is just once. We have only one 6 here out of all the 6 outcomes that we have there. So the probability will be 1 out of 6. Dice A is rolled 150 times. Find the number of times it is expected to land on number 6. So the probability of getting a 6 is 1/6. So I need to times that by the number of times the experiment is repeated, which is 150 times. When I do that, I get 25, which means the expected number of times it could land on number 6 within this 150 times will be 25 times. Let's move on to part B1. So I have drawn a grid here. I'll tell you the reason why. So in this question, dice A and dice B are each rolled once. Find the probability that the two numbers they land on have a total of 6. So a total of 6 means to get a 6. So here the outcomes in dice A is 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, and 6. So to get a total of 6, the combination between A and B will be getting a 2 and getting a 4 in the second dice, or getting a 3 in the first dice and getting a 3 in the second dice. So the probability of getting a 2 in the first dice is you have 3 out of 6. So that's going to be 3 out of 6. We times it by the probability of getting a 4 is going to be in the second dice is going to be 3 out of 6. So I can multiply these two together. So when I multiply these two together, I get 9 out of 36. Or getting a 3 in the first dice is going to be 1 out of 6. So I need to times that 1 out of 6 with getting a 3 in the second dice, which is 2 out of 6. So when I times these two, I get 2 out of 36. So I need to add these two together. So in that case, I end up getting 11 out of 36. That is the probability. Or I can use a grid like this as well to understand it better. So if that's not clear, we can use a grid as well. The outcomes of dice A, I'm going to write it at the top, which is 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, and 6. And the outcomes of dice B, I'm going to write it in the side here, which is 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. This is dice A, this is dice B's outcomes. So the ways in which we can get a sum of 6, which is a total of 6, is when dice A, which has 2's, get combined with dice B's 4's. That means it's going to be this, these 3, and these 3. And the other way is getting a 3 in dice A and getting a 3 in dice B. So there are this, not that, sorry. So it's going to be this and this. So altogether, we have 11 out of 36 scores. So it's going to be 11 out of 36. Let's move on to the next one that we have. The next part of the question is where we are supposed to find the probability that when the two numbers they land on have a total of 6, at the same time, both numbers are 3. So here there is a condition. We call this as a conditional probability. So that is out of the outcomes that we have here, only we need to consider. So the total outcomes are 11. So out of 11, they both numbers are 3. In that case, 3 and 3, the probability was 2 out of 36. So that's going to be 2. Out of 11, it will be 2. or we can even use the grid here. So out of these ones that I have marked with a dot, getting both are being 3s will be this and this. So which is going to be 2 out of 11. So we may use a grid, or we may do it without a grid as well. Let's see what we have next. Dice B is rolled n times. The probability that on the nth roll it first lands on a 3 is 32 over 729. We need to find what this n is. That means this n is going to be the number of times the dice, this dice has been rolled. So to find this, on the nth roll we get 3 means. So this is relating dice B. So the probability in that, based on the outcomes that we had for dice B was 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. Those were the outcomes. So getting a 3 is 2 out of 6 chances. So the probability of getting a 3 is 2 out of 6. This is what we get in the last, when we roll it for the last time. Previously, before getting a 3, all the other numbers were different numbers, which means in that case, the probability would have been 4 out of 6 because that is not a 3. Now, on the nth term, if we get 2 over 6 means this is what we get on the terms before that. So that's going to be n minus 1. So these two together, when multiplied only, we get this probability, which is 32 over 729. I need to now solve this to find what n is. I can simplify this 4 and 6 here by dividing both by a 2. So I get 2 and 3 here. And this 2 and 6 can be simplified as well. So I get a 1 and a 3. So I can write this as 2 over 3 to the power n minus 1. And I'm going to take this 1 over 3. So I can just take the 3 to the other side that is being divided. So when I take it to the other side, it gets multiplied. So I already have 32 over 729 here. So I'm going to take the 3 here, 3 from this side to the other side. So it gets multiplied with the 3. So I'm going to put it there. Now, I'm going to simplify this. This 3 and 729, they are divisible by 3. So I can write it as 1, and 729, when I divide it by a 3, I get 243. So I have 2 over 3 to the power n minus 1, which is equal to 32 over 243. This is what I get. This 32 over 243, I can write that in a way it has a base of 2 at the top and a base of 3 at the bottom, which means 32 can be written as 2 to the power 5, and this 243 can be written as 3 to the power 5. So this is equal to 2 over 3, this entire thing, to the power n minus 1. Now, what I could do next is, I could get this 5, that is the common index. I can get that outside the brackets and write it as 2 over 3 to the power n minus 1. And in the other side, I could write it as 2 over 3 to the power 5. Now the bases are equal. Therefore, I can say that the indices are equal, which means this n minus 1 is equal to this 5. To find the value of n, I need to bring this minus 1 to the other side. That becomes plus 1. So the value of n is 6, which means the dice here, it's rolled 6 times. On the 6th time is when we get a 3. Before that, we do not get a 3. So the value of n is 6. Let's move on to question 9. In question 9, the diagram shows a sketch of the graph y is equal to 4x cubed minus x to the power 4. The graph crosses the x-axis at the origin and the point A. So the point and the point B is a maximum point. This is something very important, the term maximum point. Now, the moment you see the terms maximum point, minimum point, stationary point, we need to understand that they give us a hint there. So the hint there is that the gradient at those points will be equal to a 0. So here, the gradient is, so gradient means a line. If we draw a tangent here to the curve, this is going to be the line. this line has a gradient of 0. That's the meaning. The first part of the question explains is asking us to calculate, to differentiate 4x cubed minus x to the power 4. So to differentiate means to find the derivative function. So that is the formula that is used to calculate the gradient. So to do that, now we have 4x cubed. So the power of x has to be multiplied with its coefficient. So 4 times 3, which is 12. You write that and put the x. And the power of this x will be 1 less than the power that is already given to us. So here it's given as x to the power 3. 1 less will be 2. And the next one, we have minus x to the power 4. So here the power is 4. We need to multiply with its coefficient. So the coefficient of x is negative 1. So when I multiply 4 with negative 1, I get negative 4. I write this x. And the coefficient and the power of x is a 4. So we need to reduce that power by 1. That is a 3. So I can write it as 12x squared minus 4x cubed. This is what I get as a derivative function. So this is how we differentiate it. The next one is to find the coordinates of B. So like I already mentioned, this point B is a maximum point where the gradient is 0. So the derivative function is the formula to calculate the gradient, which means this 12x squared minus 4x cubed is equal to a 0 for point B, because the gradient there is 0. So here the gradient is 0. So I can say that this 12x squared minus 4x cubed is equal to a 0, because the derivative function is the formula used to calculate the gradient. So this will be equal to a 0. Then I could bring this 4x cube to the other side. So when I do that, I get 12x squared is equal to 4x cubed. And I'm going to simplify it. So both this 12 and 4, they are divisible by 4. So I can cross out this 4, and 12 divided by 4 is a 3. And then this x squared and x cubed can be simplified as well. X squared, and here I have x cubed, so 2 of the x's will get cancelled out. So I have 3 in this side, and in the other side I have x, which means the value of x is a 3 here. I need to find the coordinates of point B. So the x value for point B is known, which is 3. Now I need to find the y value. To find the y value, the value of x has to be substituted into the equation of this graph, which is y is equal to 4x cubed minus x to the power 4. So y is equal to 4x cubed minus x to the power 4. The value of x has to be substituted here. So I can write it as 4 times 3 cubed minus the value of x is 3 to the power 4. So 4 times 3 cubed is equal to 108 minus 3 to the power 4, which is 81. So from 108, when I deduct 81, I get 27. So this is the y value. So the y value is 27. So then the coordinates will be 3 and 27. In part C, we are supposed to calculate the gradient of the graph at point A. When we consider this point A is on the x-axis, which means on the x-axis means there the value of y will be 0. So if we write it as a coordinate point means the y value will be 0. We need to find what this x is. We do not know what that x is. But the question is asking us to calculate the gradient of the graph, which means to calculate the gradient of the graph, we need to use the derivative function, which is this 12x squared minus 4x cubed. We need to substitute the value of x to find the gradient. So to find, I'll write it as dy over dx here. This is how we write for a differentiation, a derivative for the derivative function. So is equal to 12x squared minus 4x cubed. I need to first find what this x is, because only then I can substitute it here to find how much the gradient is. To find the x value, at this point A, I know that the y value is 0, which means I can use the equation of the graph, substitute the y value as 0 and find its x value. So the equation of the graph is y is equal to 4x cubed minus x to the power 4. The y value is 0, which is equal to this 4x cubed minus x to the power 4. So I'm going to bring the x to the power 4 to the other side, which is equal to 4x to the power 3. I can cross out this x to the power 3 that I have here with 3 of the x's that I have in x to the power 4, which will give us the value of x, which is equal to a 4. Now I know that the value of x is a 4. This 4 is what I need to substitute into this equation, into the derivative function to calculate the gradient. So I have 12. The value of x is 4. So that's going to be 4 squared minus 4 times 4 cube. So when I put this in the calculator, let's see what we get as the answer. So I have 12 times 4 squared minus 4 times 4 cube. So when I do that, I get minus 64 as the value. So that's going to be the gradient. So minus 64 is the gradient. Let's move on to question 10. ABCDEF is a regular hexagon. So this is a regular hexagon, which means in a regular hexagon, all the sides will be equal in length and all the angles will be equal in length. That's the meaning. DF, DA, and DB are diagonals. Complete the following statements using 3 different triangles. Triangle DEF. DEF is this triangle. Is congruent to, it's definitely congruent to this triangle that we have, which is BCD or DCB. So triangle BCD, because these two sides are equal and definitely this side will be equal to this. So these two triangles will be congruent. Then the other one that we need to write is the other 2 triangles which are congruent. So that's going to be this triangle and this triangle, because these 2 sides are equal. This side is common. This side and this angle will be equal. So therefore I can say that the 2 triangles are congruent. So that's going to be triangle ADF. So ADF, and the other triangle is ADB, triangle ADB. So those 2 are the triangles that are congruent. In the next part, P and Q are points on the circle with center O. So therefore, we know that these 2 will be the radii of the same circle. So definitely they will be equal. TP and TQ are tangent to the circle from point T. So that is how it's given. This is point T. And then the next one is to complete the information based on the diagram given. In the 2 triangles, which is OPT and OQT, OP is equal to something because each is a radius, so that's going to be OQ. So they will be equal. The next one is OT is a common side. So this is the side that they have given. So they will be equal. They will be the same measurement because both the triangles, they share that side. Then the next one is angle OPT. So that is OPT, that is this angle here. And this angle OQT, they both will be equal to 90 degrees. The reason why they both will be equal to 90 degrees is because this is the radius and this is the tangent. The radius and the tangent will be perpendicular. So I can write it as because radius is perpendicular to the tangent. So I can write it this way. Now, based on these 3 points that they have mentioned, the 2 triangles are congruent, and we need to mention which criterion we have used here. So it's going to be right angle. This OT is the hypotenuse, and this side is the side. So that's going to be RHS. Now, due to this reason, this proves that the two tangents, which is TP, so that is going to be this one, and the other one is TQ, are equal in length. So when 2 triangles are congruent, all the corresponding sides, the matching sides, will be equal to each other. So the matching sides as well as the matching angles will be equal. So therefore, we can say that this length and this length, TP and TQ, will be equal to each other. Let's move on to the next question that we have. There are three functions given in this question. We need to find what G3 is. So that means I need to use the second function, which is g of x, which is x minus 1 squared, where the value of x is this 3. So I'm going to substitute 3 here for this x. So that's going to be 3 minus 1 squared. So 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 squared is a 4. So that's the answer for that question. The next one, find f x minus 2, giving your answer in the simplest form. So I need to use the f of x function because it says f of x minus 1 is what you're supposed to find. So here I have 1 minus 3 of x as 3x as f of x. So then the value x minus 1 should be substituted for this x. So that will be 1 minus 3 times the value of x, which is x minus 2. So 1 minus 3 times x is 3x, minus 3 times minus 2 is plus 6. I need to combine all the like terms. So this will give me minus 3x and plus 7. So I can write it as 7 minus 3x or minus 3x and plus 7. The next one is to find the inverse function of f. So the f of x function is given to us as 1 minus 3x. So I can write as this is equal to y. If we are to find the inverse function, we first need to make x the subject and then switch x and y. To make x the subject, I need to, I can bring the minus 3x to the other side. So when I bring this minus 3x to the other side, I get 3x plus y is equal to 1. I can take the plus y to the other side now. So 3x is equal to 1 minus y. To find what x is, this 1 minus y has to be divided by 3. I could have taken the 1 to the other side as well in the equation, but I would have got minus 3x. Then again, I should have divided by minus 3. So there will be too many negatives. So to reduce that negativity only, I did, I just swapped minus 3x and y around. And then I made x the subject. So this is what I get. So I have done the first step. The next step is to switch x and y. So I have x here and y here. I'm going to switch them around. So when I do that, I get y is equal to 1 minus x over 3, which means this 1 minus x over 3 is the inverse function. Let's move on to question D. We need to solve this and find what g of f of x minus g of x times f of x is equal to 3x cubed plus ax squared plus bx plus c. We need to find what a, b, and c is. First, we are going to find what g of f of x is. The meaning of this is this f of x is sent into g of x. So f of x is 1 minus 3x. This is sent into g of x means the x in the g of x gets replaced with this 1 minus 3x. So I can write it as I have x minus, I'll write it here. So I have x minus 1 squared as g of x. This x that I have here gets replaced with f of x function, which is 1 minus 3x. So this 1 minus 3x gets replaced with this x here. So this is what I get. Now I'm going to solve this. So when I do that, I get 1 minus 3x, and then I have minus 1, and then I have this square. So this is the same as, this is equal to, plus 1 minus 1 becomes a 0. They will cancel out. I have minus 3 with the square, minus 3x with the square. That is going to be minus 3x times minus 3, which is 9x squared. So I have 9x squared as the answer for g of f of x. Now I need to find what g of x times f of x is. That is actually the multiplication of g of x and f of x. So g of x is x minus 1 squared. F of x is 1 minus 3x. So what we got to do here is g of f of x, which is this 9x squared, I need to subtract g of x. So g of x is, according to the question, g of x is x minus 1 squared. So x minus 1 squared. And f of x is 1 minus 3x. This entire thing has to be subtracted. So I'm going to put the square brackets there. Then, now I need to solve these two brackets and I need to see what I get there. Then I need to deduct that from this 9x squared. So then I'm going to do x minus 1 squared first. So when I do that, that's the same as x minus 1 times x minus 1. I can square the first term, multiply the terms inside the brackets, which is x and minus 1, which is minus 1x, with a 2, that becomes minus 2x. Then I do minus 1 square, that is minus 1 times minus 1, which is plus 1. Now this has to be multiplied with this 1 minus 3x. So because these two, this x minus 1 squared is multiplied with 1 minus 3x, which means x squared minus 2x plus 1 has to get multiplied with 1 minus 3x. So I'm going to expand this. So x squared times 1 is x squared. X squared times minus 3x is minus 3x cubed. Minus 2x times 1 is minus 2x. Minus 2x times minus 3x is plus 6x squared. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times minus 3x is minus 3x. I need to combine all the like terms. So I have minus 3x cubed. So I'm going to write it here. Then I have minus plus 6x squared and x squared, which is the same as 7x squared. Then I have minus 2x and minus 3x, which is the same as minus 5x. And I have this plus 1. I'm going to write this instead of the two terms that we have inside the square brackets. So I have minus 3x cubed plus this 7x squared minus 5x plus 1. So this is inside the square brackets. This has to be deducted from 9x squared. So I need to get rid of the brackets here. So to get rid of the brackets, all the terms inside the brackets should be multiplied with this minus, because everything is being deducted. So I get 9x squared. So minus 3x is plus 3x. Minus 3x cube is plus 3x cube. Minus plus 7x squared is minus 7x squared. Minus 5x is plus 5x. Minus times plus 1 is minus 1. This is what I get. Now I need to simplify this further. So I get 3x cubed, and then I have 9x squared and minus 7x squared, which is the same as 2x squared. So 3x cubed plus 2x squared, and I have plus 5x minus 1. And according to the question, here this is equal to 3x cubed plus ax squared plus bx plus c, which means the value of a is 2, b is 5, c is minus 1. So 2, 5, and minus 1. This is what we get. Let's move on to the next question, which is question E. Now we need to find h of x minus f of x. In the question, h of x function is given as 3 over x, and I need to deduct f of x function, which was 1 minus 3x. When we do a subtraction for an expression like this, always make sure to put the brackets. And now to simplify this, so it's like now here the denominator of this 1 minus 3x, there's no denominator, means the denominator is a 1. So to subtract fractions, we need to make sure that the denominators are the same. To make the denominators the same, I need to times this by x. This also has to be times by x. Now I'm going to expand this, but I'm going to put this x in front. There is a reason why. I will explain that to you. Now here, I'm going to write this 3. The reason why I put this x in front is because it gets multiplied with x and then it gets deducted. I brought it in front, so it actually gets multiplied by minus x. So both the multiplication and deduction, I'm doing both at the same time. So minus x times 1 is minus x times minus 3x is plus 3x squared. And here, the denominator is over x. Now, in this case, I have 3 minus x plus x squared. So if I want, I can rearrange it as 3x squared. Then I have minus x plus 3 over x. Now, when we consider this, we will have to factorize it further. But when we do 3 times 3, we have a coefficient here. So 3 times 3 is a 9. So we will have to find the two numbers that multiply together to give us a 9. And when we add them together, it should give us -1, the coefficient of this x here, which is -1. But there's only 2 ways of forming a 9, which is 3 times 3 and 1 times 9. Even though we could get a 9 there, we cannot get this -1, which explains that we cannot simplify this further. Therefore, we are going to leave this just like this. We're not going to do anything else. Let's move on to question F. We need to solve this. H of x to the power n is equal to 3 times x to the power 7. This means that now when we consider the h of x function, we have 3 over x. The x in the, now when we write it here, the h of x function is 3 over x. That is how it's given in the question. Now here, it's within the brackets, we have x to the power n, which means this x is replaced with this x to the power n. So I can write it as 3 over x to the power n. This is only equal to 3 times x to the power 7. This is what we get. Now I can simplify this, and I need to find what this n is. So I can cross out the 3 and the 3 here because they both are divisible by 3. So I have 1 over x to the power n is equal to, so 1 over x to the power n is equal to x to the power 7. Now, this x to the power 7 is in the numerator and this is in the denominator. So the one that is in the denominator, I'm going to take it to the numerator. So it's a positive, it has a positive index. When it goes up, as it's at the bottom at the moment, when it goes up, it becomes a negative index. So it will be x to the power -n, which is equal to x to the power 7. Now we know that the bases are the same, bases are equal, therefore we can equate the indices, which means -n is equal to 7. So to get rid of the negative, I need to divide both the sides by negative. So the value of n is -7. So this is how we find what n is. Let's move on to the next question that we have. That is the last question, which is question 12. O is the origin 0, 0. A is the point 8, 1. And B is the point 2, 1. The coordinates of point A and B are given. So I will mark the points here. So coordinate A is 8, 1, which means the x value is 8 and the y value is 1. And point B is 2 and 5. So the x value is 2 and the value of y is 5. Write as a column vector, that is O to B. So I need to find what O to B is. O to B is going to be this. So I need to go 2 units to the right and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units up because it's here. So that's going to be 2 and 5. They both are positive because we are moving to the right and up. Then I need to find what A to B is. So A to B is from this point to this point. So here I need to move from 8, I need to move up to 6. So that's up to 2, that's going to be 6 units, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. And then I need to move from this point 1, I need to move up to point 5. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So that's going to be 6 and 4. So I can write it as 6 to the left, so that's going to be -6, and 4 up, so that's going to be +4. So it's going to go like this, and then we need to go up. The next one is to find the equation of the line AB. So the equation of the line AB means the 2 points connected are A and B. So we need to make use of the coordinate points A and B. So point A is given to us as 8, 1, and point B is given to us as 2 and 5. So we are going to label this as x1, y1, x2, y2. Substitute into this equation. We need to find, before we substitute into the equation, we need to find what M and C is. So we are going to find the gradient first. So we're going to make use of the gradient formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to substitute into this formula, and then I need to find what the gradient is. So y2 is 5. So that's going to be 5 minus y1, which is 1, over x2 is 2 minus x1 is 8. So when I simplify this, I get 4 over -6, which is the same as -2 over 3. So this is the gradient that we get. Now using this gradient, we can complete half of the equation, that is y is equal to -2 over 3x plus c. I now need to find what the y-intercept is. I can use any one of the coordinate points here. It can be 8 and 1 or 2 and 5. And I need to substitute into the half completed equation, and I need to find what the y-intercept is. So I used point A, which has the coordinates 8 and 1. So 1 is equal to -2 over 3 times the value of x, which is 8, plus c. So this is 1 is equal to -16 over 3 plus c. So to find c, I need to bring the -16 over 3 to the other side. That becomes 1 plus 16 over 3, which is equal to c. So when we add 1 and 16 over 3, we can put that in the calculator if you're unsure how to do it, because we need to make the denominators the same, because this 1 is a whole number here. So we end up getting the value of c as 19 over 3. Now we know the gradient. The same way we know the y-intercept as well. So the equation is y is equal to -2 over 3x plus 19 over 3. This is what we get. Let's move on to the next question that we have. Find the equation of the perpendicular bisector of AB. Give your answer in the form y is equal to mx plus c. Now here, there are 2 points that are very important. One is perpendicular and the other one is bisector. Now, when a line is perpendicular, the gradient perpendicular to AB means the gradient of this perpendicular line will have the negative reciprocal of the gradient of AB, which means if it's parallel, the gradient will be the same gradient, but as it's perpendicular, the gradient will be the negative reciprocal of the gradient of AB. Now, in the previous part, we got the gradient for AB as the gradient for AB was -2 over 3. Now, we need to find the gradient of the perpendicular line. To find the gradient of the perpendicular line, we need to do the negative reciprocal, which means you need to flip this. So that becomes 3 over 2. And negative reciprocal means you simply change the sign. So this is negative, this becomes positive, which means the gradient of the perpendicular line will be 3 over 2x. 3 over 2. And we have this x here plus c. Now we need to find the y-intercept. Now in the question, usually a coordinate point will be given to us, mentioning through which point the perpendicular line is going to pass through. But here they have indirectly given us what that coordinate point will be. That is, it's a perpendicular bisector. So a bisector means, so when we consider the line AB like this, a bisector is a divider that divides the line into 2 equal parts. To divide it into 2 equal parts, so this side and this side will be equal. That's the meaning. So a perpendicular bisector will always go through the midpoint. So this point will be the midpoint. So here indirectly, they have given us the hint that it goes through, the perpendicular line goes through the midpoint of this line AB, which means we are supposed to calculate the midpoint of AB. Now, to calculate the midpoint of AB, we need to know the midpoint formula, which is x1 plus x2. We need to add, divide it by 2. We need to add y1 and y2 and divide it by 2. So that is, we need to find the average of the x values and the average of the y values. So the coordinate A was given to us as 8, 1, and B was given to us as 2 and 5. So like we labeled previously as x1, y1, so I can label it as x1, y1, and then I have x2, y2, so I'm going to label it this way. Now I'm going to substitute it here. x1 is 8, and then x2 is 2, 8 and 2, I need to add, divide it by 2. y1 by 2 is 1 plus 5, divide by 2. So 8 plus 2 is 10, 10 divided by 2 is a 5. 1 plus 5 is 6, 6 divided by 2 is a 3. So I get the coordinate points as 5 and 3. This is actually the midpoint. So the perpendicular bisector is a perpendicular line that goes through the midpoint of this line AB. So this 5, 3 only should be substituted here into the half completed equation to find out the y-intercept. So the y value is 3, so that is equal to 3 over 2 times the value of x, which is 5, plus c. So I need to solve this to find what c is. So I get 3 is equal to 15 over 2 plus c. I need to take this 15 over 2 to the other side, so it has to be deducted. So c is equal to 3 minus 15 over 2. When we subtract it, we get the value of c as minus 9 over 2. So then the equation will be y is equal to 3 over 2x minus 9 over 2. This is the equation of the perpendicular bisector. Then let's see what we have next. So this is the last part of this question. The line AB meets the y-axis at P. The perpendicular bisector of AB meets the y-axis at Q. Find the length of PQ. So to do this question, let me first draw a small sketch. So this is how the diagram was given to us, where point A was somewhere over here, and we had point B somewhere over here. So we had this line connecting, this is the line connecting A and B. According to the question, it states that the line AB meets the y-axis at P. So when we extend this, it hits the y-axis at P. So this is going to be that P. Then the next one is, so we know that that is actually, it hits the y-axis at P means that is actually the y-intercept of this line AB. So previously we found the equation of the line AB, which was y is equal to minus 2 over 3x plus 19 over 3. So this value, the y-intercept is that 19 over 3. So that is the y-intercept of the line AB that we found previously, that we got previously from the equation. Now, the next one is the perpendicular bisector of AB meets the y-axis at Q. That is, now the perpendicular line for this perpendicular bisector of this line AB will be something like this. So it hits the y-axis at Q means, so if I extend this y-axis like this, so it's going to meet the y-axis at Q. So this is going to be that Q, which means this Q is going to be, this Q is going to be the y-intercept of the perpendicular line that we found previously, which was minus 9 over 2. So this is that minus 9 over 2. Or I can even write it as 4.5. Now the question is to calculate the length of PQ. Now here, this distance, the length of PQ is going to be the distance from here to here. I need to find that distance. Now to calculate the distance, there are two ways to do it for this question. So here, In this case, to find the distance is to find the difference between the two numbers. So this 19 plus 3, 19 over 3, and then this minus 9 over 2, which is this 9 over 2, has to be added together because they are in line with each other. Or simply, we can substitute this into the distance formula, which is x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. You need to add them together, square root it, that will give us the distance. But in that case, we need to write these 2 points in the form of coordinates. So they both are on the y-axis. So definitely the x value of those 2 coordinates will be 0. So we can label it as x1, y1, x2, y2 and substitute it. Or to find the distance in between these two. So from 0 to this point is 19 over 3. I need to add that distance and this distance. So this is minus 9 over 2 means the distance there is 9 over 2 or 4.5. So I need to add these two together. So I can put this in the calculator. So we have 19 over 3 plus 9 over 2. So when we add them up, we get 10.833 as the answer. So I can write it as 10.83 as the distance. So 10.83 units, that is correct to 2 decimal places, is the distance between P and Q. Or we can also use this distance formula like I mentioned. So when it comes to the straight line graphs, it's important that we remember these 3 formulas, which is the gradient formula. So for gradient, there are 2 different formulas, but y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 is used when the coordinate points are given. And this is rise over run is usually used when we have the graphs given to us. Then we have the distance formula and the gradient formula. We have to remember them. With that, we will be done with all the questions in this paper.